Hi guys, welcome back to Pragmatic Politics. I'm your host, Colby Cons. So I wanted to make a video comparing Biden and Trump, the two presidential candidates, and really determine, when you get down to a bunch of different categories, who is better at what, who is better for the people, who you would rather vote for. So I came up with 17 different categories that I thought are important things that we should compare Joe Biden and Donald Trump on, and I'm going to go through and break them down on each point. So here's my list that I created, 17 categories, and I'm going to be doing this video in 3 parts. The first part is going to be based off the economy, taxes, and money, basically. Each of the candidates' money policies, because I know people care the most about money, how much money they're getting in their pocket, how much money the government's going to be taking from them, how the economy is affecting them. So I figured that would be the first part of the video that I'm going to do. Second part will be about who you are as a person and how you handle yourself in business, how corrupt you are, collusion, truthfulness, how much you lie to the public, what your political ideals are, if you're a racist, how you conduct yourself on social media. And then the third part's going to be strictly about policies and the big main policies that I think affect Americans the most. I did childcare, social security, environment, healthcare, immigration, abortion, and LGBTQ rights. So for this first video, we're hitting economy, taxes, bankruptcy, and student loan debt. We're first going to look at Biden on taxes. So right here I have an article from the Tax Foundation breaking down Joe Biden's tax vision. So he hasn't officially released a formal tax plan, but he's proposed a bunch of changes, and he wants to increase spending on climate change, infrastructure, healthcare, education, and research and development. So we're going to have to raise some money to be able to do this, and part of that is raising taxes. So the Tax Foundation found that Biden's going to reduce income tax reductions for those who are earning over $400,000 a year and increase the top marginal income tax rate to 39.6% from today's 37%. The Section 199A deduction would also be phased out for those earning over $400,000. Basically, if you're making less than $400,000, none of this will affect you. This will only be affecting people making $400,000 or more. Your taxes will increase. He's also going to raise capital gains tax back to ordinary income tax rates, and up to a top rate of 23.8%, and for those earning over $1 million in capital gains. He's also going to eliminate the step up in basis for inherited assets with capital gains, instead taxing those gains at death. So this will also only affect those who are taking in a lot of capital gains money every year. Your taxes will rise, especially though if you're earning over $1 million in capital gains. So that will not affect the majority of Americans. Then Biden's going to cap the value of itemized deductions to 28% for those in higher marginal tax brackets, and he's going to restore the peace limitation on itemized deductions for those with taxable income above $400,000. So again, this will only be affecting people who are making a lot of money and are making over $400,000 in a single year. He's going to raise the corporate income tax from 21% to 28%, so only affecting large corporations. He's going to impose a 15% minimum book tax on corporations with $100 million or greater in income. So again, only corporations that are making over $100 million or more will have this tax rate, will get this tax. And then he's going to double the tax rate on global intangible low income tax earned by foreign subsidiaries of U.S. firms. So unless you're a foreign subsidiary of a U.S. firm, this will not affect you. He's going to impose the 12.4% Social Security payroll tax on income earned above $400,000. So all these tax proposals are going to be affecting people who are high income earners, the wealthy, the uber wealthy. Biden's taxes will barely be affecting anyone who's making less than $400,000 in a year, which is most Americans. I believe 90% or probably 95% of Americans will not have their taxes increased pretty much at all. When they did the full review of it, they said on average taxpayers would see 1.75% reduction in your paycheck because of these taxes. However, for those in the bottom 20%, you will only see a 0.7% decline, a barely noticeable decline in money. Okay? And this is all, remember, he's trying to help issues with climate change, infrastructure, healthcare, education, research, and development. These things need funding. You need to get it from people, and he's taking it from people who are uber wealthy, who can afford to lose some of their income. If you are poor, if you are not in the top 10%, you are not going to be really seeing a deduction in how much money you're making each week because of these taxes. Biden's also going to have a bunch of tax incentives to help people who are doing good. So if you have an electric vehicle, you'll get to be able to take a tax credit. If you're using residential energy efficiency, so solar panels or special light bulbs, you'll get a tax credit. Making permanent the new markets tax credit. Establishing a manufacturing communities tax credit. So if you have a manufacturing place here in the U.S., you and your community supports these local factories, these local manufacturers, you will get a tax credit. Renter's credit to reduce rent and utilities. So if your rent costs more than 30% of your income, you will actually get a credit to help you. Expanded the earned income tax credit for those older than 65, so this helps people that are old. $5,000 tax credit for informal caregivers. He's going to expand the low-income housing tax credit, so if you're in low-income housing, you'll get a credit for taxes. He's going to reinstate the solar investment tax credit. He's going to have a tax credit for childcare facilities. He's going to have a tax credit for childcare facilities built by businesses, providing a 26% tax credit to match traditional retirement contributions, and establishing a first down payment tax credit of up to $15,000. So, if you look at all these taxes, he's going to increase taxes on the uber wealthy and people who make $400,000 or more, or people who are making money in capital gains. But if you aren't making that, your taxes will barely be affected. 0.7% increase. You won't even notice it. You literally will not notice it. However, it is to benefit everyone in our country, to help combat climate change, help with infrastructure. And he's also going to be giving out a lot of different tax credits, which will help you end up paying less taxes overall. So I think this plan's pretty good. I think we really could increase our taxes more, especially because I think we need to fund universal health care. But this is a small step in the right direction. I think we could tax the uber wealthy a lot more than what Biden's doing. But it's a decent proposal, I would say. So for Biden, we're going to say increases taxes on the wealthy. And we'll label this a green. Because that's good. I think that's a good policy. Most people will not be affected by Biden's tax raises. So next, we're going to get to Trump's taxes. And we're going to look at the tax cuts that Trump proposed and passed through a couple years ago. Forbes did an article doing an analysis on all of Trump's tax cuts. So when you go through this, you'll see, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, a former ex-Goldman Sachs partner who now somehow runs the Treasury, claims that it benefited most Americans, where Bernie Sanders calls it a massive giveaway to the rich. Who's right? So I went through and read through the article, and what I found was that the richest 1% received 10% of the total benefits from these tax cuts. So 1% of people received 10% of the benefits, and it's the richest 1%. The top 5% received 26.5% of the total benefits. So the 5% richest people in America received 25% of the tax cut benefits. The top 20% of the wealthiest people in America received 52% of the benefits. And guess what? The bottom 20%, the lowest income earners, the lowest 20% people, the people in poverty, received only 3% of the tax cut benefits. The people who had the least amount of money saw the least amount of benefits from these tax cuts. So, clearly, Trump's tax cuts helped the people who had the most money. People who didn't have money, the people who can't afford to pay as much in taxes, received 3% of the benefits. So, Trump's tax cuts, they help the rich. So for Trump, for taxes, we're going to go helps the rich. Because that's exactly what his program did, that he passed and sent through. And we're going to do this as red, because honestly we need to increase taxes on the wealthy, because those are the people who can afford it. So the next section we're hitting is the economy. Trump loves to brag about how he's created the greatest economy in the history of the world, simply based off the stock market and simply based off the GDP of our country. And I think Biden, who worked with Obama, we're going to use their economic policies when they're in power, because Biden had a huge hand in that, and will probably be bringing the same theories and the same plans to office when he's the president and not just the vice president. So this guy on Twitter created a spreadsheet where he kept track of the Dow under the Obama-Biden administration and the Dow under the Trump administration. And you can go through and look right here. 1 year into Obama and Biden's administration, they had 33% increase in the Dow. 1 year into Trump's administration, he only had a 31% increase in the Dow. So in the first year, under Biden and Obama, the Dow actually increased at a higher percentage than under Trump. Next, we'll go into the second year. Biden and Obama, 49% increase. For Trump, only a 25% increase. So in year 2, the Biden-Obama administration actually had doubled the Dow increase than under Trump's year 2. We'll look at year 3, 59% under Obama and Biden, only 48% under Trump. So year 3, they're significantly ahead, 11% more. Year 4, 72% Biden and Obama. Trump, we haven't gotten there. We're in the middle of coronavirus. We don't know exactly where this is going to go. A couple days ago, we were only at 41%. So, as you can see clearly with the data, Biden-Obama administration actually had a better increase in the Dow in the stock market than during Trump, despite his claims. GDP, Trump actually did have a bit better of a GDP run. As you can see, in year 1 was during our economic collapse. Biden-Obama administration, we had a huge recession, so it was at negative 2.5%. Trump was at 2.4. Year 2, 2.6 for Biden and Obama, 2.9 for Trump. Year 3, 1.6, 2.3. So Trump is doing a little bit better on GDP than under the Biden-Obama administration. However, Trump claimed he was going to get 5, maybe even 6% increase in GDP every year. And so far, he hasn't even gotten over 3%, and that's with his tax cuts on the wealthy. Going back to the Dow, in the modern era, only Clinton had a better Dow performance than Obama. Every year under Clinton ended in a positive territory. Obama only had 1 negative year. So far, Trump has had 2 positive years and 1 negative year. So, Biden and Obama have already done better than Trump has done in his limited time. Since World War I, the only presidents to have a better performance on the Dow than Biden and Obama were Clinton, FDR, who served 12 years, and Calvin Coolidge, who was president for the Roaring Twenties and left office just before the Great Depression. $100 invested in the Dow in Obama's inauguration would be worth $159 by the end of year 3, and would be worth $249 by the end of his presidency. $100 invested in the Dow in Trump's inauguration would be worth $148 by the end of year 3. This is before Corona. So even comparing just the year 3 without Corona, Biden and Obama did better with the Dow, with the stock market. Next, we're going to look at Trump's economic scorecard here. Forbes did a breakdown on his first 3 years in office. So this is all before COVID. And they found it appeared that the tax cuts started in 2018 helped for 1 year, but don't have much of a carryover effect. The promise that they would pay for themselves has not materialized, as the federal budget deficit has ballooned to $1 trillion, levels not seen in a non-recessionary environment. Remember, this is pre-corona. The outlook for a slower economy caused the Fed to lower interest rates and increase its balance sheet, which led to the stock markets rallying in 2019, even though corporate profits were flat. So the only reason the stock market did good in 2019 is because the Fed lowered interest rates. Like I said before, the GDP growth hasn't reached Trump's 3% or higher goal. He didn't do any favors with the trade wars he started, and it looks like the trade agreement with China was an overpromise and an under-delivered deal. While the GDP growth has crossed 3% in a few quarters, the full year basis hit a high point of only 2.9%, much shorter than Trump's claim that the economy could grow 4, 5, or maybe even 6% when he was president. Here we can look at unemployment. Unemployment rate's about as low as it can go. You can see here from Obama and Biden, it's followed about the same path and even actually slowed down a bit since Trump has gotten into office. It was at a steady decline, and it's still on a decline. So Trump hasn't really done anything more for unemployment than Biden and Obama did, and he just kept it on the same path. Job growth has been about the same. I'd say it spiked in 2014, but since Trump came into office, it stayed about the same. Wage growth. Economists have expected wage growth to be stronger as the economy recovered from Great Recession, but it seems to be stuck around 3%. Here we can look at the stock market. It's followed about the same path as when Obama was here, however going down and back up. So seems to be a little more unsteady with Trump than Obama, but it's still on a steady incline. It's on the same path that Biden and Obama have been on. S&P 500 on the same path about, except it spiked down and then back up. But pretty much the same path with more volatility when Trump was in office. U.S. federal budget deficit was up here when, so Obama, it spiked in 2008 during the recession, and Biden brought it all the way back down to below $500 billion. And yet under Trump, it has completely ballooned back over $1 trillion, as you can see. U.S. trade deficit has grown despite the trade wars. And the U.S. goods exports to China has actually decreased, which hurts companies and farmers. So as you look through this, you can really see that Trump's claim for being the best economy in the world isn't really that valid. He's really just stayed on the same path as Biden and Obama, and hasn't done anything different or anything to stick out. And the markets are actually even more volatile with him in office than under Biden and Obama. The deficit has exploded. So the U.S. trade deficit has grown despite the trade wars. The U.S. goods exports to China has actually decreased, hurting our economy. So, and the federal budget deficit has ballooned to over $1 trillion. So Trump's economy is actually not any better than it was under Biden and Obama, and actually might even be worse. NBC actually did a article that came out just the other day showing the same thing that I'm saying right now, that the data doesn't support Trump building a great economy. He inherited it from Biden and Obama. You can go through. Quarterly GDP growth is only 0.1% different than under Obama and Biden's second term. New jobs per month, Biden and Obama actually beat him on that by over 20,000 jobs per month. And then Dow Jones Industrial Average, we already went over this, followed along the same path. Unemployment rate, we went over this, followed along the same path, just steady decline. So, as we can see, their economy has been pretty much the same under Trump as under Obama. He's done nothing different, nothing special to make it better. And now that we've been hit by Corona, he's actually going to have to do something to try and improve our economy and save it from collapse. And I'm not sure if he can do that, because he didn't do that in the first term. He just stayed on the same path. So for Biden and Trump, we're going to do decent for both of them, because it's been a decent economy until Corona hit, and they've really just done about the same. So we're going to do decent for both. Both economies have been good under both presidents. They haven't been any different from each other. Under Trump, a couple things have been worse with his trade wars, but I think they're going to be about on equal footage for the economy. Now we're going to do bankruptcy laws. This is important for small businesses and for families that are having a hard time financially. The bankruptcy laws really don't favor those people. They favor the creditors. They favor the banks. These people need help when they're in poor financial circumstances. And Biden has worked with Elizabeth Warren to create a new bankruptcy policy. So this is on the Biden website, so you can say I'm not biased. This is literally what it says. What he's going to do is make it easier for people to be crushed by debt to obtain relief through bankruptcy. He's going to expand people's rights to take care of themselves and their children while they're in the bankruptcy process. He's going to end the absurd rules that make it nearly impossible to discharge student loan debt in bankruptcy. And he's going to let more people protect their homes and cars in bankruptcy so they can start from a firm foundation when they start to pick up the pieces and rebuild their financial lives. He's going to help address shameful racial and gender disparities that plague our bankruptcy system. He's going to close loopholes that allow the wealthy and corporate creditors to abuse the bankruptcy system at the expense of everyone else. So, this is a good policy. Bankruptcy is here to help people who have fallen on really poor financial times and they need help restarting their lives. And bankruptcy is an important part of that. And right now it really favors the creditors and the banks And Biden is going to try and fix that with the help of Senator Warren, who I believe in. She's really good at creating plans. And I really like that Biden is willing to listen to someone else and actually take advice from an expert on how to fix things. I think that's a bonus in my point. You know, a president who's going to ignore everyone and just listen to himself is not someone I'm looking for. I want someone who's going to listen to the experts, take their advice, and adjust his policies based off of that. And that's what he's doing here. He's going to help the families. So, bankruptcy laws, we're going to say help families. I think that's a good thing. I think that's what it's for. It's not for helping massive corporations. So, we're going to take a look at Trump's bankruptcy now. So the National Law Review did a review on President Trump's new bankruptcy legislation. And what they did, and to summarize it, basically they said they do not know whether these changes will create a more level playing field, but many courts have ruled that the dollar threshold in the venue provision doesn't apply to preference claims. So the fact that new thresholds appear in the same section of the SBRA as the new requirement that trustees consider statutory defenses addresses only those two men. It may change nothing. And while a trustee's consideration of potential statutory defenses before filing a complaint might weed out some complaints, the unfortunate reality is that the vast majority of cases have at least some shade of gray. Basically, these changes are going to do nothing, is what they've said. These changes are still just going to keep the creditors and the banks in the favorable position they are for bankruptcy, and the families and small businesses are going to be the ones who struggle the most, which is not what we need. The banks and credit agencies already have the most power. Families, small businesses, they need the help right now, especially with Corona. And he wants to do nothing to change it, and his changes that he already made are basically doing nothing. Also, Trump has made it a habit of declaring bankruptcy from his massive companies several times. So, the Washington Post did an article on this, fact-checking whether this is true. Trump's companies have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. What this does is it means the company can keep working and wipe away most of its debts. Often shareholders lose much of their equity. So Trump declared bankruptcy 6 times, taking advantage of the bankruptcy laws that help big corporations much more than they help families and small businesses. And this because he could not keep up with the debts on his casinos. He had multiple casinos open, could not keep up with the debts, and all the shareholders lost money. Trump sold off all the assets, took the profits from the assets, closed down the company, and then restarted a new casino, profiting off of the bankruptcy laws that benefit the large corporations that small businesses and families can't do. So Trump for bankruptcy, we're going to say, does nothing, will not change. Because right now the laws benefit big corporations and creditors, and Trump is a big corporation owner, and he has no interest in changing the laws to benefit the people who need it most. And the bankruptcy laws aren't great. I think not changing something is meh, so we're going to do orange here. Could be worse. He could be making it worse. He tried to pass a law to kind of help it. As we found out, it's not going to really change anything. But he's not making it actively worse. So we're going to do it orange here. Lastly, for this section, we're going to cover student debt. There are millions and millions of students in debt with federal subsidized loans. And that's because the price of tuition in all of these colleges has grown at an exorbitant rate. And these kids are going to be in debt for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years if kids are going to med school or law school. So both these presidents have talked about needing to make changes in both of these situations. First person we're going to look at is Joe Biden. So Joe Biden is calling for widespread student loan forgiveness, and Forbes did a little analysis on this and found that Biden's proposal would forgive all undergraduate federal student loan debt for borrowers who attended public colleges and universities, as well as historically black colleges and universities and private minority-serving institutions. Also, borrowers who earn an income of less than $125,000 per year would be eligible for student loan forgiveness. So even if you didn't go to a public college or a minority college and you're making less than $125,000, your loans are going to be forgiven. Biden also supports $10,000 in across-the-board federal student loan forgiveness as a response to the coronavirus crisis. Senate Republicans rejected this in the final version of the CARES Act, so it didn't get passed through. Biden is going to try and push that through when he becomes president, though. So this is a good thing. Forgiving student loans is only going to help the economy. All this money is just federally subsidized. It's money coming out of citizens' pockets going straight into the government's coffers. And yes, it's good for the government to be repaid on these loans, but it's going to stimulate the economy having all these millions of people no longer have to pay these federal loans and instead could buy things to, improve their lives and it's going to stimulate the economy. You could buy, a new house, buy a new car, maybe spend more money on groceries. This money is important to people, and simply because the cost of university is so high, these people are forced to take out these loans and are forced to pay them back over 10 and 20 years. It's a lot of debt hanging on someone just to go to school, which is needed in our society today. You can't get a good job unless you have a college degree. It's that simple. So, for Biden, we're going to say forgive loans, and I think that's a great thing. I honestly do. Like, how can you... The only people who are against forgiving loans are people who went to college, got loans, and already paid them all off, and are selfish and think that people... I had to pay my loans off. You need to pay your loans off. That's literally the only reason you could disagree with this, because it helps the economy and helps millions of Americans to forgive these student loans. So, I think that's a great thing. Now we get a look at Trump. So Trump actually did want to forgive federal student loans. Unfortunately, he's actually not going to do anything about it. The problem is, he hired Betsy DeVos to be the head of the Department of Education in our federal government. So this is an article that I will be showing later when we go over the corruption section on both candidates. And in this article, they talk about Betsy DeVos. So she came to the administration through her work as a leading Republican donor, drawing on the fortune made by her father-in-law from the multi-level marketing giant Amway. A pyramid scheme, a multi-level marketing company. Basically a giant pyramid scheme that Betsy DeVos made her entire fortune off. Actually, her father made the fortune off, and she just benefits from the pyramid scheme. So at the education department, she gave a bunch of top jobs to people formerly employed by the likes of Career Education, Bridgepoint, and DeVry. These are for-profit college companies that make tons of money off students. These companies had to pay fines or make settlements over charges of deceptive marketing and inflated job placement statistics. So the people working in our government are people who are unethical about education and unethical towards students and taking advantage of them. She and her team have treated that industry with remarkable solicitude, insisting that the defrauded former students of Corinthian and ITT go on making loan payments, even though they were defrauded. These companies and these schools defrauded their students, and she's still making these students pay their loans. So, meanwhile, DeVos's policies have left tens of thousands of teachers, nurses, police officers, and others unable to realize any practical benefit from congressionally mandated program of public service loan forgiveness. DeVos would appear to wield more than a typical cabinet officer's clout in this administration by the fate of a presidential demand. So, Trump tried to make a presidential demand for measures to ease the impact of the $1.5 trillion in ballooning student debt on millions of recent college attendees and the state of the economy. So Trump basically told DeVos to handle this issue of all these massive student loans that people are having to pay off over years and years. And as DeVos, whose department would have to implement this directive, she ignored it. And Trump, whose re-election prospects depend on her money and her Michigan campaign ties, has done nothing to force the issue. So the president is blocked from his desired goal by a functionary whose wealth confers political protection. Basically, Trump needs her money and her dad's money for his election, so he's willing to let go of his goal on helping student loans because DeVos doesn't want to do it for whatever reason, even though it's her job as Department of Education to follow the orders and the will of the president and the people. She doesn't want to do it, and she gives Trump a lot of money, so Trump no longer wants to do it. He's made no issue. He's mentioned nothing about student loan forgiveness ever since DeVos ignored his presidential demand. So, we're going to say, Trump, do nothing. And I blame him. It's up to, if he really wanted this done, he would talk to her. He would get it done. But one of his big donors said no, so he's saying no. You know, all he cares about is the money. If there's any risk that money's gonna stop coming in from Betsy DeVos and her father, he's not gonna risk it. So he's not gonna forgive anyone's loans. So that's the end of part one of my comparison between Trump and Biden on the economy, taxes, bankruptcy, and student loans. Basically the money section. And as we can see when we go through it, Biden is done pretty good. He's a pretty good option as president if you care about money, you care about a good economy, you care about your taxes, you care about taxing the wealthy, and your taxes not being affected. And if you want your student loans and bankruptcy laws to work for you as an individual and not for big corporations. Trump, on the other hand, his economy is, equal on par as with Biden and Obama. However, when it comes to taxes, he wants to reduce taxes on the wealthy, and that doesn't help the lower class. It doesn't help the middle class. This only helps the wealthy. And this reduces funding on integral government projects that our country needs right now, like based for climate change and for new clean energy and for infrastructure. This money has to come from somewhere, and the wealthy are the people who can afford the taxes the most, and Trump is instead cutting taxes to the wealthy, and the wealthy are the ones who see the benefits from these cut taxes. When it comes to bankruptcy laws, Trump tried to kind of help, but his policy did nothing. And when it came to student loan forgiveness, Trump is walked over by a big donor. And that's it. So when it comes down to part one, Biden comes out ahead for sure. Anyone who sees the data, looks through the facts, you can see that Biden is a better option so far in part one of this presidential comparison. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe and stay tuned for part two.